The phone rang just as I was finishing the last of the chili. My own recipe, though it never tasted quite the same without Barbara's secret touch. A glance at the caller ID made me smile. Jessica. Sweetheart. Hey Dad. Just checking in. Her voice was warm, the way it always was at the start of our calls. It made the emptiness of the house feel a little less vast. I settled into my armchair, the one Barbara had picked out for my 60th birthday. I'm doing just fine, honey. Just had dinner. How's the trip? Busy. These investor meetings in Austin are endless. Mark's been a rock star though. He's closing a deal as we speak. There was a proud lilt in her voice. Are you sure you're okay? You sound tired. Just a long day, I said, though the truth was most days were long now. Thought I'd lost my reading glasses for a couple hours yesterday. Turned out they were on my head the whole time. I chuckled, but she didn't. There was a pause on the line. I could picture her, the same worried crease in her brow that her mother used to get. Dad, maybe we should talk about getting a little more help around the house. It's a big place for one person. I've managed this house for 30 years, Jess. I'm not an invalid. I tried to keep my tone light. So, Austin? You enjoying the weather at least? It's hot. Look, Dad, I should run. Mark and I have a dinner with some venture capitalists. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. Be safe. I heard the click, then the muffled sound of movement. She must have dropped the phone into her handbag. I was about to hang up when I heard their voices, crystal clear through the speaker. You see what I mean? Jessica's voice was different now. Stripped of its warmth, all business. He's losing it. Glasses on his head. It's only a matter of time before he leaves the stove on. My blood ran cold. My hand froze on the receiver. It's time, Jess. Mark's voice, smooth and decisive, the way he sounded in his business pitches. Sunset Gardens is a good facility. He'll be comfortable and we won't have to worry. He's a liability, Mark. The word, liability, hit me like a physical blow. This house is his entire net worth. With the market in Palo Alto, we're looking at $2 million easy. Exactly. Mark sounded pleased. We use the proceeds for his care, the basic package of course, and the rest is the down payment on that Sea Cliff property we've been dreaming of. The one with the ocean view. Jessica laughed, a sharp, cold sound. God, he was so grateful just to hear from me. He has no idea what's coming. The longer we wait, the more compliant he'll be. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the hardwood floor. Barbara and I had refinished ourselves a lifetime ago. I sat in the crushing silence of the home we'd built together, staring at her portrait on the mantel. Her eyes seemed to hold a new expression, not just love but a fierce, protective warning. The antique clock in the hallway, a gift for our 25th anniversary, ticked steadily in the growing dark. Outside, the sprinklers kicked on in the garden Barbara had designed. Something solid and unyielding settled in my chest where my heart used to be. They thought I was a liability. A problem to be managed and monetized. They were planning their future in the grave I hadn't even finished digging. But I wasn't dead yet. And I wasn't nearly as compliant as they believed. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark, Barbara's face my only witness. The house felt different, the very air thick with their betrayal. Every corner held a memory they were so eager to sell off. I finally stood, my legs protesting, and walked to the study. My hands, once steady building a career in structural engineering, now trembled slightly as I opened the filing cabinet. I found the folder marked Family Finances. Inside were decades of sacrifices, carefully documented. Stanford tuition bills, over $200,000. I remembered the second mortgages, the skipped vacations, the years of driving a beater truck so my princess could have the education we never did. Barbara would rub my shoulders as I worked late at this very desk. Michael, you're working yourself into the ground, she'd say. She's going to have every opportunity we didn't, Barb. She's brilliant. Barbara had kissed my forehead. Just don't give so much that she forgets the value of it. I should have listened. The wedding receipts were there too. $50,000 for a single day. We'd budgeted for 10, but Jessica had cried and I'd crumbled. I took on private consulting jobs for 6 months straight to make up the difference. Daddy, you're the best, she'd whispered during our father-daughter dance. I'll never forget this. But she had. Just like she'd forgotten who co-signed on her first condo. Just like she'd forgotten the year they'd lived here rent-free after Mark's startup first failed, how I'd covered the bills and listened to his grand plans, patting his back and calling it an investment in family. You're like a father to me, Mike, he told his friends at a barbecue, his arm around my shoulders. I hit the in-law jackpot. I'd been proud. A fool but proud. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, unchanged since Barbara's passing. Her perfume bottle still sat on the dresser. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the original deed. Michael and Barbara Thorne in 1992. No liens, no co-signers. Just my name now. Standing there, surrounded by the ghost of our life together, the hurt began to harden into something else. Something determined. They wanted to put me away and sell my life's work. They thought I was a confused old man too trusting to fight back. I looked at Barbara's photo. Don't give so much that she forgets. Well, she'd forgotten. But she was about to remember that her old man wasn't as helpless as he seemed. I walked to my desk and found the business card I'd kept for 2 years. Eleanor Vance, real estate attorney. Barbara had insisted we see her after her diagnosis. Just to be sure everything's in order, Michael. It was time for another consultation. The law offices of Vance and Associates were sleek and modern, all glass and polished steel. I'd worn my best suit, the one I'd worn to Barbara's funeral, and arrived with 10 minutes to spare. Eleanor Vance was a woman in her 50s with a sharp gaze and a no-nonsense handshake. Her office had a view of the city, a far cry from the cozy brick building I'd imagined. "Mr. Thorne," she said, gesturing to a chair. "I remember you and Barbara. My condolences." "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "I need to discuss my daughter and son-in-law." I laid it all out. The phone call, the nursing home, the $2 million valuation of my home, their plans for a house in Sea Cliff. Eleanor listened, her expression neutral, taking notes on a legal pad. "A familiar, if unpleasant story, Mr. Thorne," she said when I finished. "Let's start with the basics. The house is in your name only." "Yes. Since Barbara passed." "Then legally they have no standing. They cannot force a sale, cannot commit you to a facility, and cannot touch a single asset without your explicit permission." She set her pen down. "The house and everything in it is yours. Period." The relief was immediate, a wave of cool clarity. "So if I wanted to sell it?" "It's your decision. The market is exceptionally strong. Properties like yours in Palo Alto are receiving multiple cash offers, often well above asking within days." She leaned forward. "If you were serious about a quick sale before their return, we could have it under contract in a week." I thought of Jessica's laugh, of Mark's cold calculation. They saw square footage and an ocean view down payment. I saw the porch where Jessica took her first steps, the kitchen where Barbara taught her to bake. "I built the addition with my own hands," I said, more to myself than to her. "The sunroom Barb wanted." Eleanor watched me, her eyes missing nothing. "This is a monumental decision, Michael. Once it's done, it's done." "They think I'm a liability," I said, my voice low. "It's time I showed them just what kind of asset I can be." We spent the next hour discussing numbers, networks of cash buyers, and legal timelines. The consultation fee was $350. I paid in cash. Walking to my car, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring. She was in for the surprise of her life. The confidence that settled over me as I drove home was colder and sharper than any I'd ever known. This wasn't the pride of building something. It was the grim determination of dismantling a threat. Eleanor Vance's words echoed in my mind. Asterisk, "It's your decision." Asterisk. I was unlocking my front door when my phone rang again. Through the kitchen window I saw it vibrating on the counter. "Jessica." I picked up on the fourth ring. "Dad. There you are. I called earlier." Her voice was a perfect blend of concern and mild irritation. "Is everything okay?" "Just fine, sweetheart. Was out in the garden pulling some weeds. You know how it is." I kept my tone light, grandfatherly. "How was your dinner?" "Oh, you know. Schmoozing investors. But listen, I have amazing news." She paused, and I could picture her exchanging a look with Mark. "We found the most wonderful place for you to retire. It's called Sunset Gardens." I gripped the edge of the granite countertop I'd installed myself. "A retirement community? That sounds lovely." "It's more than lovely, Dad. It's like a permanent vacation. They have a pool, activities, and there's medical staff on site, just for peace of mind." The rehearsed cell was nauseating. Medical staff? That sounds rather clinical. "Just precautionary," Mark's voice cut in from the background. He was on speakerphone. "We want you to be safe, Mike. You deserve to be pampered." Pampered? The word they use for warehoused. "We've already toured it," Jessica added, her voice bright. "We can have everything arranged by the time we get back. We fly home on Friday." Friday. They wanted me packed and ready for processing in a week. "Actually, Jessica," I said, walking to the sunroom and looking out at the Japanese maple Barbara had planted. I have a surprise for you too. For when you get home. Her voice warmed with genuine greedy pleasure. A surprise? Oh Dad, you shouldn't have. What is it? Something I've been working on since we last spoke. I think you'll find it enlightening. You're so sweet. We'll take care of all the details when we're back, okay? Just relax and let us handle everything. Of course, I said, my voice a soft murmur. I love you. Love you too, Dad. See you Friday. The line went dead. I set the phone down and opened my laptop. The screen glowed, illuminating my determined face in the dim room. My fingers, which had designed bridges and skyscrapers, now typed a new set of commands. * top real estate agents, Palo Alto. * The search results populated like a battlefield map. I was no longer a grieving widower. I was a general preparing a counteroffensive. I spent the night researching, my methodical engineer's mind comparing agent profiles, sales data, and client testimonials. One name consistently rose to the top: Jason Reed. His photo showed a man in his 40s with a confident, almost predatory smile. His specialty: luxury properties, quick closings. One testimonial read, *, Jason sold our estate in 72 hours for 15% over asking. A machine. A machine was exactly what I needed. The next morning I dialed his number. Jason Reed. His voice was brisk, efficient. Mr. Reed, my name is Michael Thorne. I'm looking to sell my home on Addison Avenue. Quickly. Addison Avenue? I heard the immediate shift in his tone, the sound of dollar signs registering. What kind of timeline are we discussing, Mr. Thorne? Days, not weeks. He didn't miss a beat. I can be there in 2 hours for a walkthrough. At 11 a.m. sharp, Jason Reed stood on my doorstep, dressed in a suit that cost more than my first car. The moment he stepped inside, he let out a low whistle. Mr. Thorne, this is exceptional. His eyes scanned the vaulted ceilings, the custom built-in bookshelves, the flawless hardwood floors. You said quick, but with a property like this, quick is an understatement. He moved through the rooms with our appraiser's gaze, but I saw the genuine appreciation. He tested a door hinge, ran a hand over the mahogany banister. This craftsmanship, you don't see this anymore. I'm an engineer. I believe in doing things right. It shows. He stopped in the sunroom. This addition, incredible. The light, the flow. I built it for my wife. She loved the morning light. He pulled out his tablet, pulling up comparable listings. Properties in this condition on this street, we're looking at a baseline of $1.9 million. But with a bidding war, we could push it well over 2. He looked at me, his expression serious. I have a client, a tech CEO from out of state, looking for a turnkey property exactly like this. All cash, no contingencies. He could close in 10 days. 10 days? Jessica and Mark would be back in 8. What's the catch? I asked. No catch. He wants a prestige address and doesn't have time for drama. His lawyers handle everything. Jason leaned in. Mr. Thorne, if you're serious, I can have an offer on your desk by dinner time. I looked around the sunroom at the ghost of Barbara reading in her favorite chair. I thought of Jessica's voice calling me a liability. Let's do it, I said, the words final. The whirlwind began. By 7 p.m., a preliminary offer was in my inbox. $2.1 million, all cash, closing in 10 business days with a 30-day post-close occupancy clause if I needed it. I spent the evening on the phone with Eleanor Vance, who reviewed the contract line by line. It's a solid offer, Michael. Aggressive but clean. I signed the digital documents with a click of a button. The house was officially under contract. The following days were a blur of inspections and paperwork. The buyer's inspectors were a silent, efficient crew who found nothing to critique. Whoever built this place knew what they were doing, the lead inspector told Jason, unaware he was speaking to the culprit. I meanwhile began the painful process of disentanglement. I rented a storage unit and started packing the essentials. Barbara's porcelain figurines, our wedding album, the silverware set from her parents. I left behind the heavy furniture, the ghost-filled sofas and beds. I was not moving my life, I was salvaging its core. I also found a small, furnished apartment in a quiet complex in Menlo Park. It was bland and anonymous, a place to land, not to live. I paid the first and last month's rent in cash, giving a false name for the reference. I was disappearing one piece at a time. On day 7, with Jessica and Mark due back in 24 hours, I made 2 final calls. The first was to a 24-hour locksmith. Security issue? The burly man named Leo asked as he drilled out my old locks. Something like that, I replied. The new locks were steel, modern, and impersonal. They clicked with a definitive, final sound. I paid him $500 in cash. The second call was to a private number. A package for 1241 Addison Avenue, I said to the man who answered. To be delivered and installed tomorrow before 5 p.m. discreetly. The Home Guardian unit? As discussed. It will look like a standard Wi-Fi router. The feed will be accessible from your app. Perfect. The final piece of my plan was a note. I wrote it by hand on my personal stationery, my penmanship steady and clear. Dear Jessica and Mark. Asterisk, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered that some locks cannot be opened with a key of betrayal. I heard your entire conversation about Sunset Gardens and my value as a liability. Asterisk, the house has been sold for $2.1 million. The funds are secure in an account you will never access. Asterisk, I have moved. Do not look for me. Asterisk. Your personal belongings have been moved to A+ storage, on El Camino Real. You have 14 days to collect them. Asterisk, you were given everything and in return you plan to take the last thing I had, my freedom. I hope the lesson was worth the price. Asterisk. Goodbye, Dad. I slipped the note into a crisp white envelope and sealed it. Tomorrow I would tape it to the front door. The stage was set. The players were en route. And I, the supposed liability, was holding all the cards. The morning of their return, I woke before dawn. The sterile silence of the Menlo Park apartment was a stark contrast to the familiar creaks and sighs of my home. I made coffee in the small machine, the ritual feeling alien. My suitcase, packed with the curated fragments of my old life, stood by the door. At 9 a.m., I drove to the title company for the closing. The conference room was all polished glass and efficient smiles. The buyer was represented by a stern-faced attorney who signed documents with robotic precision. Jason Reed was there, offering me a firm handshake. Congratulations, Michael. You've just navigated one of the smoothest high-stakes transactions I've seen. I signed my name for the last time, transferring the deed of 1241 Addison Avenue. A few clicks on a computer, and the wire transfer was initiated. $2.1 million minus fees was on its way to a new private account at a bank Jessica knew nothing about. I drove away from the title company a wealthy man, but the weight in my chest wasn't from the money. It was from the finality. I took one last, slow drive past the house. The new discreet camera was hidden in the landscaping, looking like a small black rock near the porch. I opened the app on my phone, and a crystal-clear live feed of my own front door appeared. The motion sensor was armed. Back in my apartment, I positioned Ellen's photo on the generic nightstand. It's almost time, Barb, I whispered. I poured a glass of bourbon, the good stuff I'd been saving for an occasion that never came, and sat in the single armchair, my phone propped up on the coffee table. The timestamp on the feed read 4:55 p.m. Their flight would have landed. They'd be stuck in Silicon Valley traffic, probably giddy, discussing their plans for my transition. I took a slow sip, the amber liquid burning a path of steady resolve down my throat. At 5:38 p.m. the motion alert buzzed. A black Tesla Model S Mark's car pulled smoothly into the driveway. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. I leaned forward, my focus absolute. The car doors opened. Jessica emerged first, stretching her arms above her head with a tired smile. Mark popped the trunk, hauling out their expensive luggage. They moved with the unshakable confidence of heirs apparent arriving to claim their throne. I watched Jessica fish the key from her designer handbag. She inserted it into the new lock with a practiced motion. It didn't turn. A frown creased her forehead. She jiggled it, her movements becoming more frantic. This is weird, her voice came through the phone speaker, tinny with confusion. My key isn't working. Mark set down the luggage, his expression shifting from weary to annoyed. Let me try. He took the key, forcing it into the lock with a grunt of effort. Nothing. Try the garage keypad. I watched him disappear around the side of the house. Jessica pulled out her phone, no doubt to call me. The landline I'd had disconnected days ago. After several rings, her face morphed from confusion to alarm. It's not even going to voicemail. It's just dead. Mark returned, his face ashen. The garage code doesn't work either. And the back door is deadbolt from the inside. He ran a hand over the new lock on the front door. Jessica, these locks are brand new. This wasn't an accident. Dad wouldn't do this, she insisted, her voice rising in pitch. He doesn't even know how to change a lock. Then who did? Mark snapped, his financial advisor's mind finally recognizing a hostile takeover. He peered through the large front window. The house isn't empty. Our stuff is still in there. It was then that Jessica's eyes landed on the white envelope taped squarely at eye level on the inside of the glass. Her name was written in my precise engineering script. Mark, she said, her voice a whisper. She pointed. Using the key he still had for the old mailbox, a detail I'd overlooked, Mark managed to jimmy the lock and retrieve the envelope. Jessica snatched it from him, her hands trembling as she tore it open. I watched their faces as they read. Confusion first, then dawning horror, then sheer, unadulterated panic. The color drained from Jessica's face. He sold the house, she breathed, the words barely audible. Then her voice escalated to a shriek. He sold the house. For $2 million. Mark ripped the letter from her hands, his eyes scanning my words. That cunning old fox, he hissed, his body trembling with a rage I could feel through the screen. He played us the whole damn time. He kept it all. Jessica was sobbing now, ugly, gasping sobs that ruined her perfect makeup. That was our future. Our down payment. Your future? Mark whirled on her, the mask of the devoted son-in-law vaporizing. This is your father, Jessica. Your mess. You were supposed to handle him. My mess? You're the one who said he was a liability. You're the one who priced out the nursing homes. Well, he was a liability. Look what he's done. Mark gestured wildly at the house, the symbol of their shattered plans. We're locked out of a $2 million asset. Our lease is up next month. What are we supposed to do now? I turned off the feed. I had seen enough. The bourbon tasted like victory. The lesson had been delivered. In the sudden silence of my apartment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the refrigerator. The confrontation was over, but the war wasn't won. They were cornered, and cornered animals are dangerous. I knew my daughter. Her sense of entitlement would quickly override her shock, and she would come looking for me. I powered down the phone I'd used for the camera app and slid it into a drawer. It had served its purpose. From now on, I would use only the new prepaid phone I'd purchased under a different name. The first rule of a successful retreat is to break contact. The next morning, I drove to a different coffee shop, 3 towns over. I sat in a corner booth, the local newspaper open in front of me, but my mind was on the financial fortress I needed to build. The money was in a new account at Summit Private Trust, a conservative institution recommended by Eleanor Vance. My first meeting with my new account manager, a discreet man named David, was in an hour. The office of Summit Private Trust was all dark wood and hushed tones. David was in his 50s, with a calm, reassuring demeanor. Mr. Thorne, he said, shaking my hand, your funds have cleared. We've established the accounts as we discussed. Yes, I said. The annuity that pays out a monthly stipend, the investment portfolio with a conservative risk profile, and the trust that designates the remainder to the Bay Area Wildlife Conservancy upon my passing. It was the final elegant twist of the knife. Not a penny would ever go to Jessica or Mark. The charity was one Barbara had loved. It felt right. Everything is in order, David confirmed. Your financial life is now completely private and secure. As I left the bank, a true sense of freedom began to seep into my bones. For the first time in 2 years, my life was my own. No one was managing me, pitying me, or plotting against me. I took a long walk through a park I'd never visited before, watching families play and retirees feed the ducks. I wasn't one of them, not yet. I was something else, a ghost with a full bank account and a clean slate. I knew Jessica would be trying everything, calling old friends, showing up at my club, maybe even filing a missing persons report. But I was a competent adult who had sold his property and moved. There was nothing anyone could do. The trail ended at a storage unit and a P.O. box. That evening, back in my anonymous apartment, I opened my laptop. I wasn't looking for surveillance or real estate. I was looking at travel websites. The world was suddenly, wonderfully open to me. I wasn't just hiding, I was starting over. Roy Hayes had taught me that. And Michael Thorne was finally ready to learn. A week passed in the quiet rhythm of my new life. My mornings began with coffee at a different local cafe each day, followed by long walks exploring Menlo Park's hidden trails. I was a ghost, but a content one. The financial security was a fortress, and the silence was a bomb. But a part of me remained on alert, the engineer who knew that even the best design structure could have a hidden flaw. The flaw in this case was my daughter's tenacity. I knew she wouldn't give up easily. The money was too large, the humiliation too deep. The first sign of the storm came via an email to an old account I checked out of morbid curiosity. The subject line was, "Dad, please." I deleted it without reading. Then a voicemail was forwarded to my new phone from my disconnected landline service. A frantic, tear-filled plea from Jessica, her voice cracking with a performance of worry. "Dad, we're so scared. Where are you? Are you okay? We need to talk." I saved it, not out of sentiment, but as evidence of her tone before the inevitable shift. The shift came 2 days later. I was reading in my apartment when my prepaid phone buzzed. An unknown number, but the area code was Palo Alto. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from a man named Robert Gable. His voice was smooth, professional, but with an undercurrent of steel. "Mr. Thorne, my name is Robert Gable of Gable and Stern. I'm representing your daughter, Jessica Thorne Miller. We're deeply concerned about your well-being and your recent, let's say, abrupt financial decisions. We need to discuss a potential conservatorship filing. Please call me back at your earliest convenience." The threat was as clear as it was predictable. A conservatorship. They were going to try to have me declared incompetent, to seize control of the money through the courts. My hands clenched. They had moved from betrayal to legal warfare. I didn't call Robert Gable back. Instead, I called Eleanor Vance. "Conservatorship?" she repeated, her tone unimpressed. "It's a common scare tactic, Michael. But to succeed, they need to prove you're incapable of managing your own affairs. Selling a house for top dollar and securing your assets is the action of a very capable man. Do you have the voicemails?" "I do." "Good. Keep them. They demonstrate her emotional state, not your incompetence. My advice? Do not engage. Any communication should go through me. I'll send Gable a letter informing him of my representation. That will usually make them back down. If they actually file, we'll crush them." I followed her advice. The sense of peace I'd cultivated was frayed, replaced by a cold, vigilant anger. They weren't just greedy, they were relentless. A few days later, the storm found my new doorstep. I was returning from the grocery store when I saw it, the black Tesla, parked crookedly across 2 spaces in the lot of my apartment complex. My blood ran cold. Oh, then I saw her. Jessica was standing by the building's entrance, arguing with Mrs. Gable, the elderly manager. I ducked behind a row of hedges, my heart pounding. "You don't understand, he's my father. He's not well. He could be in danger." Jessica's voice was shrill, desperate. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Mrs. Gable said firmly, arms crossed. "I cannot confirm or deny whether anyone by that name lives here. That is privacy policy. But I'm family. Without a warrant or a police escort for a wellness check, my hands are tied." Mrs. Gable stood her ground, a tiny, immovable object. I watched as Jessica's frustration boiled over. She screamed a wordless cry of rage, kicking the tire of her Tesla before collapsing against the driver's side door, sobbing. It wasn't a performance this time, it was the raw, furious grief of someone who had lost everything they felt entitled to. I stayed hidden until the Tesla finally screeched out of the parking lot. I approached Mrs. Gable, who gave me a knowing look. "Trouble with family, Mr. Smith?" she asked, using the name I'd given. "Something like that," I replied, my voice tight. "Thank you." "She won't be getting past me," she said with a firm nod. "You have a right to your peace." I went upstairs, the groceries feeling heavy in my arms. The apartment no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a bunker. They had found me. The battle lines were now drawn at my front door. My freedom, so hard-won, was under direct assault. The attempted ambush changed everything. The anonymity of Menlo Park was compromised. My quiet retirement had become a siege. I lay awake that night, not with sadness but with a strategic fury. They had pushed too far. Showing up here, trying to bully their way into my life, it was an unforgivable violation. Eleanor Vance's letter had not made them back down. It had made them desperate. I needed a more permanent solution. The next morning, I put a new plan into motion. I drove to the storage facility where I kept Barbara's things. I spent the day there, a solitary figure amidst stacked boxes, carefully curating what little I would take with me. The rest I arranged to be auctioned. I didn't need the money, I needed the weight gone. Then I made the call I'd been considering. "Jason Reed." "Jason, it's Michael Thorne. I need one more thing. Not a purchase. A rental. Somewhere. Remote. For 6 months. A place that values discretion over amenities." There was a pause on the line. I could almost hear him smiling. He was a man who appreciated a good game. "I have a client with a cabin in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Off-grid, satellite internet, accessed by a private road. He uses it for quiet getaways. It's available. I'll take it. 2 days later I was packed. My life had been distilled into a single suitcase and a box of documents. The apartment was empty, the key left on the counter for Mrs. Gable. I paid her a full year's rent in cash to hold the unit, a necessary misdirection should Jessica come sniffing around again. As I merged onto the highway heading south, away from the sprawl of the Bay Area, the tension in my shoulders began to ease. I was escaping the battlefield. The cabin wasn't just a hiding place, it was my declaration that I would not be managed, cornered, or found. The drive up into the mountains was a winding ascent into another world. The air grew cooler, smelling of redwood and damp earth. The cabin was exactly as described, rustic, sturdy, and utterly isolated, nestled among towering trees. There was no black Tesla finding its way up here. I carried my suitcase inside. The main room was dominated by a large stone fireplace. It was simple, silent, and free. For the first time since I'd heard Jessica's betrayal, I took a full, deep breath. I built a fire as the sun set, the flames casting dancing shadows on the wooden walls. I opened my laptop, the satellite connection slow but functional. I had one last piece of business to conduct. I logged into the Summit Trust portal and initiated a single, significant wire transfer. The recipient was the Bay Area Wildlife Conservancy. The amount was $250,000. The memo line read, "In loving memory of Barbara Thorne for the preservation of quiet and wild places." It was the first installment of my new life. Not an act of revenge but one of reclamation. The money was no longer just a weapon against my daughter, it was a tool for my own peace and a tribute to my wife. Sitting by the fire, the profound silence of the forest surrounding me, I felt the last remnants of the old Michael, the grieving widower, the betrayed father, burn away in the flames. I was someone new now. Someone who answered to no one. 3 months passed in the mountains. The seasons turned, the air growing crisp with the approach of fall. My life had found a new, slower rhythm. I read books I'd never had time for. I learned the paths through the woods. I sat for hours on the porch, listening to the wind in the trees, speaking to Barbara's memory without the poison of bitterness. I checked the old email account once a week, my only tether to the world I'd left. The emails from Jessica had evolved. The pleas turned to accusations, then to legal threats from Robert Gable, which grew increasingly hollow and infrequent. Finally there was silence. Eleanor Vance confirmed that the conservatorship threat had been dropped. They had no case and no way to find me to serve papers. One afternoon a single new email arrived. The subject was, "I get it now. Dad. I don't know if you'll ever read this. Mark left. He took what was left of our savings and moved back to Texas. He said I came with too much baggage. I'm living in a studio apartment I can barely afford. I had to get a second job. I've had a lot of time to think, sitting here alone. I've been going over my whole life, every sacrifice you and Mom made, every time you bailed me out. I remember the look on your face when you danced with me at my wedding. I remember how you looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. And I remember what I said about you. The word I used. Liability. I have to live with that. I have to live with the knowledge that I looked at the man who built my world and saw a problem to be solved. I was so greedy, so blind. I thought I was entitled to your life because it was the life you built for me. You were right to do what you did. It was the only lesson sharp enough to cut through my arrogance. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just telling you. I finally get it. I hope you're somewhere peaceful. I hope you're happy. Jessica. I read the email 3 times. There was no manipulation in it, no performative grief. It was the raw, unvarnished truth, and for the first time, I heard my daughter's voice in it. Not the calculating stranger from the phone, but the girl I'd raised. A single hot tear traced a path down my cheek. It wasn't tears of reconciliation or forgiveness. It was tears for the tragic, unnecessary waste of it all. For the beautiful, happy family that had been shattered not by death, but by greed. I closed the laptop. I did not reply. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Some lessons are too painful to revisit. I walked out onto the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple over the endless sea of trees. The air was clean and cold. Below me, in the valley, the lights of a distant town began to twinkle like fallen stars. I was alone, but I was not lonely. I was at peace. The war was over. I had lost a daughter, but I had found myself. And in the quiet majesty of the wilderness, with the memory of my wife in my heart and the freedom I had fought for in my soul, it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.